Welcome back, viewers. In this video, we are going to start coding a race while going over the fundamentals of Aurora Builder's XML. Since Aurora Builder was built off of the 2014 rules of the Player's Handbook, race and species will just be called races for this video. This video will have two parts on creating a race. In the first part, we are copying an existing race from a file, which is probably the easiest way to go. In the second part, at the posted timestamp, we are going to be creating a file from scratch with help from Aurora snippets. Both of these files, once they are finished, will be posted in the Homebrew content channel on the Aurora Legacy Discord if you want access to them. For existing documentation, one source is from the website, which was later compiled into my own documentation with help of fellow content creators, especially from the mod team and fellow homebrew makers. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new file. If you guys had followed my last video on how to make content, you will know that you can use Visual Studio Code. This is what I'll be using for this video and some other stuff too. And as we start, I'll open up the workspace. Here we go. Splendid. Some code I'm working on. All right. So the first file we're making is based off the Causerati from D&D Wiki. The description reads, "The Causerati are a monstrous race similar to gnolls. They are large humanoid warhogs with brown or gray fur and piercing yellow eyes. They have humanoid hands with which they can wield a variety of weaponry and have powerful warhog hooves for feet. They possess long snouts and two large warped tusks." So let's copy a file, and we're going to copy the Half ORc file from the Player's Handbook and paste it into your custom user folder or another folder in your workspace. So for this, if you have followed the instructions, if you open a workspace and selected the custom file, you get all the access to all of these files here, supplements, spells, everything like that, so on and so forth, and user. So what we're going to go to Player's Handbook. I'm going to scroll down to race, Half ORc that I have selected here. And then here we'll have a Half ORc race. So we're going to copy this file. I'm going to hit copy. And then I'm going to go down into user and paste it in here. Nice. So now we have the race Half ORc. So now that it is posted here, we are going to be looking into all the elements of the file. Like, all this code. What are we looking at here? So let's go over some of the basics. At the very top, we have the XML version file. This just tells Visual Studio Code and Aurora and the file itself that this is an XML file. So every file needs this by default. Our snippets is generated by default, but yeah, we have this as our example. Next, we have our elements. This is an element tag. So everything in XML, there are called nodes or tags or attributes. Go by many names, but for this, the elements is a very important thing. It is like the bread of a sandwich. So these come as pairs. So we have elements down here, and then at the very bottom of the file, we have elements down here, 93. The only difference is a slash. So if it doesn't have a slash, it is like the opening. So the content can be put in between. And to close it off, you always need a slash before the element's name. So everything that needs to be loaded into Aurora has to be within elements. And yeah, the XML has to be on top. All right, so the next block we could like to call, because things in between could be called blocks, all this is called the info tag. So the info tag is not really important. It really is just code that is just important for hosting content online on GitHub. Since this file is going to be saved locally or even shared on Discord, we definitely will not be needing this code right now. So if you have this file, we're just going to delete this and call that good. We're going to make it nice and flat up top here. All right, so next we have the element. Just about everything in Aurora starts with elements, and this is an element tag. This is what Aurora Builder reads. And it is defined by name, type, source, and ID, which we'll be going into. So the name. So this is the name of the element. This tag or attribute, as known in XML, is what's used to display directly on Aurora Builder for the different selects. For this race, it will show up on the race tab. So for our Causerati race, we'll change the value, which is this right here. The space between the apostrophes. So we're going to name it Causerati. Next is the type. There are a number of types in Aurora which we will cover in this series. There's also a list of types in the unofficial documentation that I will post in the description. And I will show on the screen right now the variety of types that have its uses. This type tells Aurora where to load this element in the program and what sort of things it looks to pull from. For example, an item would have things like a goal value, some weight, and a race wouldn't have that. Since we are making a race, we're going to leave this as it is. Next is the source. The source tells Aurora what source's content is from. We can see the Half ORc is from the player's handbook, which in Aurora Builder, you can click the source at the bottom to direct you where to find the original content. This is specific to the overall source and not specific link to it. Of course, you can change that with some optional code, which we'll delve into later. We'll cover how to make a source type element in another video, since it's more important to holding content online. And since this race is from D&D Wiki, we'll put that as the source. So we're gonna select this and put D&D Wiki. To do and see how it's red, it won't allow you to do that. So it's basically the and symbol is basically an ampersand. So as long as you have the and symbol, amp, and then semicolon, then it will pop up as an and symbol. And then wiki. So yeah, D&D Wiki. For your own content, if it's something like you made it on your own, or for something you made online, whatever, like sort doesn't quite matter too much. It only really matters if you're hosting content online. Just for this project, since I will be hosting this on my own GitHub repository, I will be keeping it as this. Lastly, we have the ID. So the ID is important for each and every element, needing to be unique. This is what Aurora Builder keeps track of when it loads content. If two of the same elements have the same IDs, it will overlap one another, creating issues. Every ID has the following format. The ID is first, so that's an ID. Every space is a underscore. Followed by that, we have the author's name. Typically, we would have like WOTC. We do acronyms, so it would be like Witch of the Coast or Homebrew or D&D Wiki. So next we have source, and that is like the specific book. So if I were to do an example, and then we have the type and then the name. So it would be race, and then you have ORc. So if I were to do an ID off the top of my head, I'd be ID. Author would be, let's say, PP for Port and Press. They do some homebrew content, which is pretty nice. And then the source of their content, they've done one called Shaffrey's Apocryphal Cookbook. And then I will put the type. So if it's a race, it'll be a race. And let's say if they have a race called Hungry Pie, then we'll call it Hungry Pie. And that'll be an example of an actual name. You want to make things unique. So let's say if you have another race in like another setting that's called Half ORc as well, you don't want to have the same races because then this will overlap. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna overlap this. I'm gonna change this. I'm not the author of this content, so I'm not going to put my own name. I am going to put just in the wiki for now. Just do it like that, easy enough. I'm going to put the race and then Kazarati, because that is the name of the file. Save that. One thing we're also going to do is, before we continue on, we're going to right click this, rename, or hit F2, and we're going to just name it race, lowercase, because that's like the name convention, and Kazarati. Perfect. That way it will save some time and we load our race into Aurora Builder. All right, next we have the description tag node thing. So the description, we can see all the content that is within it. The description will display when we select something with on Aurora. So to insert text under the description, we put a P, which means like paragraph. Class flavor, that's like not necessary at all. It doesn't really do much of anything. So that kind of is how it is. You can do P. Between these tags, you can insert any text to be displayed. We can also use P class equals indent. So like this part, and this will create an indentation, like hitting the tab key on a doc. To make bullet text, simply create B. So here we have strong. It also counts as towards bolded. But you can also just do B for bolded. The same thing also applies for italics. And you can see italics here can also be I or EM. There's some other stuff we can do that's also not necessary for this code. There's center, which centers the paragraph, so it's kind of used for like DCs and stuff. You can also do H4, which is a header. So you can kind of see here we have the header for each like part of a race. So Half ORc had the guard and strong, the mark of Grumsh, tribes and slums, and so on. So we can change those. Those are headers. There's headers 1 to 5, but most commonly in Aurora Builder in the codes we only use H4. There's also lists. So we kind of see here already there's like a list here. It's created with UL. The class equal on style is not necessary, but yeah, UL, and then in between the indentations you can put LI, which equals like a little point. So you want to create a list, we can do that as well. After that, there's also div. Div is kind of used to display other elements. So in a sense of like, let's say if you create for a class, if you're creating a list of features, instead of having it all like typed out individually, you can just represent it simply as the element itself. It's mostly for classes and not so much for races, which is why on this section, Half ORc traits is all written out. Next, we have the sheet display equals false. The sheet is kind of dependent on some sort of stuff. So the sheet allows us to have it display on the sheet. Simple enough. This is on the PDF. This is how it generates. Display equals false means that it won't show up. When picking a race, doesn't quite matter, but it's just simple to have it not generate on the right hand side of like the traits, just because you don't want space to be taken up. And that's the one thing with sheet descriptions, which we'll dive into later, is having it cut down and succinct. That way it's not taking up a lot of space. Some other stuff we can do. So I will scroll down to racial trait, which is another type, and here it will show us like there's a good example. A couple of things you can do with sheets. So sheet here you can do when you are reduced to 0 points but not killed outright, you can drop to 1 HP instead. You can see here that it's more succinct than this, because compared to this you have this extra part of we're covering it on a long rest, which we can use here with usage, and usage represents one of the parentheses that we can see on the sheet. Before that, I am going to be filling in the causarati, and yeah, I'll come back. All right, so you can see here I did the center, so anything here will just be like centered in the middle of like in the Builder. You'll see it on the screen here where things are just centered accordingly. I have apostrophes in here, and I have the indent and the quote. A lot of Aurora Builder coding that you'll see in this video, it really is just copy and paste. So as I am going my mouse off screen, I'm copying and pasting things right into it. All right, so I did a lot of the description text here. One thing to notice is UL class. Like, I don't need this UL class. It really does nothing at all, from what I understand. Yeah, so it basically just creates an indentation or a list, sorry, and then these indentations of li just create points. The reason why I deleted male orc name, I could just then male Kalzarati names. For me, I like to stick true to the source material. So if it just says male or female, other genders, whatever, I like to follow it as is. So if it just says male, I'm keeping it as male. And we'll do that going forward. You can do your own preference, really, but if you're trying to stay true to the source, then keep it true to the source. There's one thing here as we are getting into the traits. The main thing that I'll be doing is changing a lot of these descriptions. So the Kalzarati, for example, it has a constitution score increase of 2, followed by an increase of 1. Since it's all just text, it doesn't quite matter, as it doesn't really affect too much of the rules per se. The only thing that really matters is that it's accurate on here. That way, when a player is picking it, they know this is what they're getting. We'll go into the actual mechanics of how to apply strength scores and constitution scores, but for now, we're just going to change these around. As well as other things here, age. You see this comment here. These are called comments. This can be done on any line of text. If you select it and you hit Control or Command, I'm not sure about Mac, Control and question mark, it removes it and basically makes it available for Aurora to read. If it's commented out as like in most code, the program will refuse to read it. This is good for comments or any notes that you want to have others read or take note of when you're creating content, or if someone's curious about how you make something and let's say your system's kind of complicated for whatever reason, commenting it is really good. But for now, we really don't need this. I'm just going to delete this as well with this one, because alignments don't matter in D&D as much as it used to. Yeah, and so a lot of this about text. You'll have some dark vision, menacing. You can change all of this. If you need to add more stuff, for example, if there's another like feature in here that you need, you can copy this whole line and just paste it underneath it. Or on your keyboard, if you are using Visual Studio Code, if you hold Alt, Shift, and then down key, you can create a duplicate just beneath it. And the same applies to above. Which you can't quite tell, but you're basically copying code up and down. Really useful if you don't want to rewrite all of this. P class equals and then strong EM savage attacks. It's a lot. Yeah, so that's a good Visual Studio Code shortcut trick that you can use when coding. So yeah, I'll meet you after I finish coding this section. Kind of finished all of this. I'll show on the screen what it looks like in Aurora Builder. If you're doing it right, it should appear like this. If you're doing another race, just wait till the end of the video, or at least when you finish everything of your race before you start testing if things work or not. If you really want to test it out, be my guest. But for now, we'll keep on going. So yeah, description is now done. The sheet display is false, as I mentioned before. Next, we have a setters. So setters are things that are like specific to certain fields of Aurora on the sheet, or for like selecting things. These things hold value, but they are unchangeable. So all these set name as names, these all define different setters and stuff. We'll delve more into that when we go into items, because they really matter a lot. But for now, these are what can be selected as an option when generating a name. So since these names don't match up with what we have, I'm just gonna copy this and paste this into here. All right, Names format. This just basically means that when you select a name amongst these 3 or 6, it'll appear as this. If you add anything to it, it will have it in it. So let's say you have Lord in front of it. When you generate some code, or when you select this in Aurora Builder, let's say you pick Goldeye, it'll appear as Lord Goldeye. These brackets represent the thing chosen. We will talk more about that later. So next we have some height modifiers. So really all it is like if you see on the box on the screen here that the cursor already has specific heights and modifiers. So the height modifier says plus 1d12, so we're going to do 1d12. After that we will do the weight modifier, which is 4d20, which is quite a lot in d20 dice. That's crazy. Next is height. So they are 5'7", and then after that we have the base weight is 185. And of course, this is all like fluff, not too necessary. We'll deal more with setters later on when we go into classes and races and that kind of stuff. But for now, this is good as it is. So next are the rules. So the rules is a collection of things, which we call rules in a way, that the element that this is under that has like stat increases, granting other elements like racial traits, which we'll go into pretty soon. Allowing a selection of options such as fighting styles, expertise, and so on. There are 3 main things in a rules. We have stat. This is like basically a specific statistic. It's typically like an integer value with a certain name attached to it. So in this case, stat name strength value equals 2. So that basically means that this race will have an additional 2 to their strength. So if you have 10 strength, selecting this race by default increases it to 12, and so on for other stats. Since we're here, this race has a constitution of +2, constitution, and a strength of +1. So I'm going to change that right here. The requirements you see here, and this is kind of more added after Tasha's and that kind of stuff. Basically what it does is that it allows you to pick, if you have the option selected, to change these stats around to not just Constitution, but to other stats as well. Tasha's added this optional rule where you can customize your ability score modifiers or improvements. And so let's say if you want to play Tasha's, let's say if you really want to play an intelligent half orc, and you grew up as in a wizard school and you weren't that like hardy, even though you have good genes, we can change with an option in an Aurora Builder. We can just simply change your constitution, that's by default, into intelligence if you so choose. And these requirements allow it. So basically what this says right here, requirements, if you know some coding, if you don't, this exclamation symbol means no or X or not allowing. And so basically it's saying it requires not these IDs of elements. So if, for example, when you select the option so let's say when you select the option to have a customized ability score modifier that's in Tasha's, this will basically cancel out. So if you have this ID, it will basically cancel out this +2 modifier. And then it kind of goes with counteracting the other things going on. It's a pretty cool system. There is some code that is already built into Aurora Builder that's also in your files, so you can check that out. If you want to find the specific file, if you have it selected like I do, you can do Control-Shift-F, and then you can find specifically where this is located. However, there are tons of stuff that I've used this for and already established content that uses this, so it'll be quite a challenge to look through. But if you want to look at it, if you want to look for the code specifically according to this, you can definitely look for it. All right, now following this code, we have the select type. So this select allows us to pick an ability score improvement. This kind of goes along with what I just said up here. As long as you don't have this, you can select a custom ability score improvement based on the race. Here, we can just change this to our race name, so the Causarati, and do the same for the bottom one here. And then, yeah, we can leave the ports as it is. Basically just says, like, because you're swapping these out, it'll allow you the selection of these. Following this, we have a stat. So one of the stats that is for all races, the innate speed stat. This is basically just your walking speed, running speed, whatever you want to call it, and the value. Following that is base. The value is 30, so let me give it 30 feet of walking speed. You can change this value depending on the race. I believe Causarati just has 30 feet, so that is fine as it is. So what bonus base does is basically it is like a comparative value. Probably the wrong way to put it, but basically it's like you're comparing two things that have the same stat name to it. So innate speed is like the base stat that's going to be used for calculating movement speed. And let's say if you have something that gives you a base speed of 25 feet. So basically what Aurora does, it'll compare based on this bonus, like, oh, you have two of the same stat with different values. We're comparing to see which is higher. And so this value equals 30 is higher. This is using other type of code if you're trying to compare value. For example, like a lot of spellcasting code, or like abilities that like you can do this a minimum of one time. You can just have it as a value 1 bonus base, and if you have more charisma than the bonus base being 1, then your charisma will just be higher. It's kind of a crude example. At some point I will show you some code regarding that when we get to that, but for now we are good as it is. Next we have size. Yeah, pretty simple enough. ID, size, medium, that's kind of a given. Vision, this race doesn't actually have dark vision, so we actually are going to remove that. And then racial traits. So these racial traits are unique. These requirements aren't required because they're more, as you can see here, it is more about dragon mark stuff, which is the old Eberron content, which we don't need. So we can just take these requirements out. All right, cool. So with that done, we are going to actually get a racial trait. So since this racial trait does not have the source or anything like that, we're going to add that in ourselves, just so we know where things are from and located. So D&D Wiki racial traits, normally add after this the race name, so Causarati, and then the name of the feature. The racial trait belongs to Causarati, and the name of the feature, the first one that is the important one, is called Forest Seclusion. So we're going to go Forest Seclusion. So we're going to do this now. You'll see why I'm doing it now in a second here, but it's important to kind of get the name of your features, your IDs caught up beforehand, so it's just more seamless that way. And to make it easy for myself, I'm just going to delete these two, and doing my Alt-Shift down, I'm going to create the same copy. That way I don't have to constantly retype in the wiki racial trait, Causarati, whatever. So here, I'm going to erase this, and then we're going to add the next one called Unrelenting Endurance. And then following that, we have Charm Resistance. Perfect. So now we have that. Following this, we can see here there's like other stuff here, like grant type language. Common, That's fine. This is also required if you want. Kind of like the same rules as Tasha's. If you want to swap out your common language, you can have this in here, but honestly, it's not required. So you can leave it as is or not. And then language orc. Because Variety is not an orc race, it's here it says it is undercommon as its other language. So we're gonna do undercommon. However, I actually don't know if the ID for undercommon is correct, if it's base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this code and I'm going to make a guess. So doing my global search on the top left here, I am going to take this out. It's going to pull up a bunch, 493 results. And I'm going to just type in undercommon just to see if this code actually exists. And see, there's already 12 instances. So in languages, in this language file, conveniently enough, there is the language, which is an exotic language spoken by Underdark traders, and it's scripted Elvish. So what we're going to just do is going to copy this code, and we're going to paste this into here. Do we need this extra stuff for requirements? No, we can probably leave. We can probably take out just the dragon mark stuff because it's not really necessary. And then if players want to swap out their undercommon language, they can, based on the option you select in the Aurora Builder. Next, we have these things. So this already is off the bat. Like, if you select this option, then you are by default allowed to take these out and pick 2 new languages. Yeah, so that's fine as it is. We don't have to change anything there. Race variants. This is specifically in accordance to the Half ORc variant in Eberron, and other stuff too, but so we don't need that at all. We're gonna take that out. And yeah, so now the rules are done. So now we can start delving into racial traits. So you can see here we already granted a type racial trait. This means that Aurora is going to be looking for these racial traits in Aurora Builder. So when you launch the program, Aurora Builder will look through each file of code. It'll look for if each grant type of code exists. So if it looks at this code, it'll be looking for a type racial trait element with the ID of this. Now, if it doesn't, let's say if you don't have it coded, you'll probably get a couple errors, such as unable to find ID or object not set to a reference. Those are 2 things that can appear. And so having this code ready and available is what we'll be doing right away. So now we have our racial traits here. These are already set up for us. We will have to change a lot of things here just because it's not the same source and stuff. So we're just going to change this to D&D Wiki. So change this. And now we simply change the source. Things are pretty okay. I want to change the first feature is called forest occlusion. So I want to rename this to forest occlusion. And then I want to take this ID that we already made and swap that, copy, and then paste it into this ID. So now when Aurora is looking for this ID, this racial trait called ID D&D Wiki racial trait causality forest occlusion, it'll find this file right here and it'll be like, okay, you'll get this thing. Now, we have a lot of things to replace here. So looking at forest occlusion, we can look up to what we already typed out. Forest occlusion. Whenever you make a dexterity stealth check while in any type of forested terrain, you're considered proficient in the stealth skill and add double your proficiency bonus to the check instead of your normal proficiency bonus. So there's not really much code here to do. Because it all is like very case specific, so there's not really much specific code we're going to be like snatching and modifying and using like all these values. We're just going to take this code and leave it as text as it is. So I'll just show you. We're just going to copy this, or you should copy it from the website that you have it up on, and then we're just going to copy, so we're going to go into the description, select this, delete it, paste this, done. Now, see this sheet display equals false. We don't want that because we want to be able to see it onto our sheets in our racial trait box. So we're going to delete this, leave it as sheet. And now we're gonna take this and we are just going to delete and paste. Now we can see here, and I'll show on the screen exactly what it looks like. So players will be able to know that they are able to make a dexterity stealth check in a forested terrain. They're considered stealth, and then they'll do the check. So basically expertise, and that will be something that they get to read and calculate in their own minds on their own. And this rule stuff here for proficiency, intimidation, all this menacing stuff that we had before for Half ORc, we don't need. So delete. All right, next we have unrelenting endurance. So as I was typing this out, I noticed that it is basically the same as like ORc. So the writing is pretty much the same here. So I'm just gonna copy and paste the IDs. I'm gonna change this. And then, yeah, things are good. I'm gonna swap out relentless to unrelenting. Very nice naming convention. And then, yeah, things are good. So here we have usage equals 1 equals 1 per long rest. We'll leave that as it is because it's basically the same. And then the description is also the same. And lastly, we have our last racial trait available here. This is our charm resistance, according to the wiki. So we're going to copy this feature here. This feature says you have advantage on any roll to resist being charmed or otherwise mentally manipulated, such as when affected by the Crown of Madness, Confusion, and Suggestion spells. Pretty strong. So that is our thing. I actually copied ahead of time, so I messed up. I'm going to go and copy our ID for Charmison. I will show you a cool trick to do with source. So if you are changing, like if you're doing what I'm doing, if you're taking an existing file and you are changing the source, but you're doing it plenty at a time, it gets repetitive, there's an efficient way of doing this. So what you can do is you can copy this piece of code, copy onto your clipboard or whatever, and then you're going to hover over this. So you could just copy and paste it, but let's say you have multiple of source equals player's handbook. One option you can do is you can hit Control H. This does the find and replace. So I'm doing, since I had this selected, it finds all instances, which is just 1 of 1, and then I'm going to replace it with this code already copied here. And then I am going to hit enter or hit the button here, and it will go my one and replace all of it. So if you're doing like lots of amount of code and like all the sources are basically the same, you can definitely do it that way. And I'll do that later on when I do it by hand. So continuing this, we're gonna swap the names. And then this, it's not accurate anymore, so we're gonna swap that with our we're going to swap that with the new description. And boom, done. So yeah, now that we saved our race, everything's looks good to me. IDs are unique, sources are the same, things are granted here, things are kind of as is. We didn't change too much. We kind of like removed and swapped things around. Things are good. Since our file, if we go up here and hit the explore button here, we can look that it's already in our user folder, as we kind of discussed in the beginning of the video. What we're going to do next is we're going to test the file. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Aurora. If you have it open, close it, because Aurora needs time to load and figure out what new stuff has been updated. Now that we're back here, I kind of made a new character already, and now that we're making a new race, we are going to be looking at finding our Causarati race. So here we are, Causarati race. And we can see here how it's already like as we expected. We have the center that we made earlier. We have the physical description. We have the names available, the traits just right here, just as you want it. Perfect. And this is our source, which is, selectable. In another video, I'll be talking about more about the source, and we'll get into that later. So now we can pick the race as normal. We're gonna test things out to see if they work. So select the race. All the grants should be available towards us. So class we don't need, background we don't need, ability scores. Checking ability scores, we can see that, yep, we get a +2 to our constitution and a +1 to our strength. Languages, we had no choice, we just get languages, feats, whatever. So to truly check all the things are correct, we're going to generate a preview. All right, so now you can see my race and stuff. So the ability score is generated perfectly. It's color causality, which is perfect. Now, as we look down into our racial traits block, we can see what we have coded. So forced occlusion has popped up when I'm making a dexterity self check. Yep. I'm wanting endurance 1 per long rest. Perfect. Charm resistance. You have advantage on any roll to resist being charmed or otherwise. Yeah. So that's how you can code a simple race. Doesn't take too much of like coding to do. A lot of it is swapping things around, knowing what things are, and yeah. In the next part of this video, we're going to be going over how to code more by hand and a bit more faster using Aurora legacy snippets, and that way I can get more in depth into what cool things, as well as sub races. So stick around to find that out.